Check out your brand new ride.
Oh yeah, baby! Woo! Yeah, thanks, man. Woo! Check it out. All right. Woo!
If you grew up in the mid-2000s, there was almost nothing cooler on TV than Pimp My Ride. The formula was pure magic. A kid with a total rust bucket would open their front door, find Xzibit standing on their porch, and 30 minutes later, walk away with a rolling wildland of flat-screen TVs, cotton candy machines, and spinning rims. It was completely over the top, and everyone loved it. Except the whole thing was basically a giant illusion.
Please, MTV, pimp my ride.
So, Tanita, check out your brand new ride.
Oh my God!
Over the years, the actual contestants have come forward in interviews and Reddit AMAs to expose what really went down when the camera stopped rolling. Turns out, the cars were nowhere near as cool as they looked. The wild reactions were heavily staged, and most of those custom builds broke down almost immediately. So let's break down the truth behind MTV's biggest lie, what actually happened behind the scenes, and where those cars are today.
I feel like the show was built on my back. It became profitable for everyone else except me.
And I heard they wasn't paying you right for doing the show, right? You wasn't happy with the pay?
Nah, it's, I've been back and forth about that.
First, let's ruin the ultimate TV fantasy. A huge chunk of those crazy, iconic features you saw on screen were ripped out of the cars the second filming wrapped. Think about the wild stuff that made the show famous. Backseat fish tanks, drive-in theater setups, cotton candy machines, and pop-up DJ booths.
We locked your wall in the glove compartment. It only opens when you hit a jackpot.
When you hit a jackpot.
Or a roulette win.
Exactly.
So you just like can't get your license or registration unless you hit a jackpot.
You have to hit 21 to get into your fucking glove box.
Imagine getting pulled over. You're like, sorry, officer.
Sorry,
give
me a second.
I gotta...
Sorry, it takes a while.
It's in there. I own this car.
We all wanted to believe people were driving around with working hot tubs in their trunks, but in reality, most of those gadgets were stripped right out because they were illegal or dangerous for the road. It was all about basic safety, like one owner got awesome LED lights inside his seats, but had to yank them out because they got hot enough to burn him. Another got a cotton candy machine with no lid, meaning sticky sugar would fly everywhere if he drove with it on. These were not practical car parts. They were temporary props built for camera shots. To be fair, not everything was thrown away. Show producer Larry Hochberg admitted that while massive 24-inch spinner rims looked amazing on camera, they would swap them for normal 20s before handing over the keys. So the car owners actually drove home was a way simpler version of what aired. The gap between the TV build and the real car was massive. Which brings us to the single biggest lie on the entire show. Pimp My Ride was almost completely a cosmetic cover-up. MTV threw thousands of dollars into flashy paint jobs and wild gadgets, but they barely touched the actual mechanical nightmares hiding under the hood. The whole show sold you on the idea of a rescue. These poor kids were bringing in rusted, broken-down clunkers, and MTV was supposed to save them. But according to multiple contestants, that rescue was purely skin deep. You could drive off in a car that looked like $1 million on the outside, while the engine, alignment, and brakes were still completely shot. The contestant stories make this painfully clear. Jake Glazier, who brought on his 1986 Buick in season 4, said the mechanics were still a total disaster. Instead of fixing his broken muffler, the crew just slapped on a fake exhaust pipe to make it look like the loud engine noise was an intentional design choice. Seth Martino from season 6 put it bluntly, saying the show barely touched anything under the hood to make his car a reliable daily driver. In fact, some of these upgrades made the cars downright dangerous to drive. Seth recalled that his car was almost undrivable on the way home because MTV added so much heavy equipment without upgrading the suspension. Every time he hit a tiny bump, the car would bottom out and the tires would scrape the insides of the wheel wells. Over on Jake's Buick, the crew had to stuff 6 extra batteries into the car just to power all the wild tech, adding a ton of dead weight to an engine that was already dying. Another contestant revealed on a Reddit AMA that after he got his car back, it sat in his driveway useless because it still did not run and he could not afford the mechanical repairs. He famously called the car a polished turd. That line sums up the whole show better than anything else. It looked amazing for the cameras, but it was completely broken underneath. Here's a wild behind-the-scenes secret that most people never suspected. If a car was a total lost cause, the show would sometimes quietly replace it with a completely different vehicle and never tell the audience. The most famous example involved a contestant named Layla and her 1998 Plymouth Grand Voyager. Her van was in such terrible shape that the crew could not fix it, so they went out and bought a nearly identical Dodge Grand Caravan to build instead. They never mentioned this swap during the actual episode. Viewers at home thought they were watching a miraculous transformation of the original van, but MTV had swapped the whole foundation out behind the scenes. Show producer Larry Hochberg was surprisingly honest about these mechanical nightmares in an interview with HuffPost. He explained that some of these rust buckets were so ancient they were going to break down no matter what you did to them. He pointed out that the crew worked hard to find obscure parts, even sending a guy to a desert junkyard in Arizona just to track down a matching hood. At the end of the day, Hochberg admitted the harsh truth. The show was never about restoring cars to make them reliable. It was called Pimp My Ride for a reason. The entire production was built for TV drama and visual spectacle, not for giving people a dependable car to drive to work. Finding out that a reality show was fake is not a huge shocker these days, but the bizarre ways MTV manufactured the drama on Pimp My Ride are definitely worth looking at. Take the house visits, for example. Those famous moments where Xzibit knocked on a contestant's front door were rarely filmed at their actual homes. MTV routinely rented nice houses specifically for those shots just to make sure everything looked great on camera. The crazy thing is, the door knock reactions were surprisingly real, just in a manipulated way. Producers would tell the contestant to wait inside, explaining that when they opened the door, they would either see someone handing them a minor gift card to an auto parts store, or they would see Xzibit. So when Xzibit actually stepped into the frame, that wild look of relief and excitement was authentic because they genuinely did not know which option was waiting for them. The final car reveals, on the other hand, were a completely different story. Those reactions were heavily rehearsed and staged across multiple takes. Producers constantly demanded over-the-top screaming energy, and if a contestant's genuine initial reaction was a bit too quiet, they forced them to do it over until they went nuts. Seth Martino admitted he was so young and naive back then that if producers told him unicorns were making him breakfast, he would have believed them. The crew did keep contestants in the dark during the build to preserve the surprise, but the wild euphoria you saw on TV was mostly a forced performance. MTV even went out of its way to fabricate personal details about the contestants just to make the episodes funnier. In Seth's episode, the crew literally dumped 2 big bags of random candy all over his floors and seats before shooting his intro just to make it look like he was so obsessed with food that he kept loose snacks everywhere. It was a completely fake story detail created by producers who cared far more about making good TV than showing real life. Beyond the fake storylines, one of the worst parts of the show was something slick editing totally hid from viewers: the timeline. Episodes made it look like these builds were finished in a few days, but the cars were actually stuck in the shop for months, leaving some contestants without their vehicles for a long time. Some owners waited more than half a year. Justin Dieringer waited 5 months to get his 1997 RAV4 back, while Seth Martino said his car was gone for around 7 months. Think about how brutal that was. The whole premise of the show featured young people who often could not afford major repairs in the first place, and now they were left without their own transportation for months. MTV did provide some help with rental cars, but that created a whole new set of headaches. Justin said he received a $2,000 transportation allowance while his car was being worked on. Seth had a different problem. Because of his age, he said major rental companies would not rent to him, so he had to go through a small, sketchy rental shop near LAX that was willing to give him a car. On top of that, Seth said MTV only covered the rental costs for the first couple of months, forcing him to pay out of pocket after that. He kept all his receipts, but MTV did not actually reimburse him until around 2 years after his episode aired. Imagine having to front rental bills for months and then waiting years to get that money back. And the financial headaches did not necessarily end once the car came home. Heavily modified cars can be more complicated and expensive to insure, especially when they are packed with custom electronics and other upgrades. But there is not strong enough evidence to say that Pimp My Ride contestants generally face skyrocketing insurance costs or major IRS tax bills because of the modifications, so those claims are better left out. So what actually happened to these cars once the spotlight turned off? The answers are all over the place, and some of them are pretty wild. A lot of owners simply decided to cash out and sell their cars as fast as possible. Jake Glazer sold his Buick after roughly a month, and the buyer later told him the engine blew up shortly after the sale. When your custom build is basically a polished turd under the hood, selling it before the engine dies is usually the smartest play. Selling was not always easy though. because MTV kept strict legal control over the vehicles. When Jake tried to auction his Buick on eBay, MTV actually stepped in, pointing to contract rules that blocked contestants from selling their cars online. MTV kept tight strings attached to every build they touched. Still, a few contestants genuinely walked away with a win. There's one awesome story about a guy named Andrew, who had his 1970 Cadillac hearse pimped on the show. Unlike all the horror stories, his car ran great, and he ended up selling the custom hearse to pay for a massive chunk of his college tuition. It is pretty cool to know that at least one of these wild builds actually changed someone's life for the better. On the flip side, some cars met a pretty tragic end. Justin Dieringer had a bunch of illegal gadgets stripped out of his RAV4 right after filming, but the car was ruined years later anyway. The vehicle reportedly caught fire on the road because of faulty wiring linked to the custom electronics MTV installed. The very tech that made his car a television hit ended up destroying it in the end, which is a wild way for that story to close. It is also worth looking at what happened to the actual shops behind these builds, because their trajectory matched the show's downfall. For the first 4 seasons, all the work was handled by West Coast Customs in California. That shop became world famous off the back of the show, and its owner, Ryan Friedlinghaus, became one of its most recognizable faces. But West Coast Customs left after season 4, so Galpin Autosports took over the garage duties for seasons 5 and 6. The split also exposed some tension behind the scenes. Friedlinghaus later said working on Pimp My Ride had started hurting his relationships with regular customers, while one West Coast Customs employee criticized MTV's production team for not being real car guys, and said the shop sometimes had to build things it did not agree with because MTV was paying for them. The drama hit the business side too. In 2014, the U.S. Department of Labor found that West Coast Customs had violated federal wage laws by failing to properly pay overtime and minimum wage to some employees. The company ultimately paid $157,592 in back wages, plus another $16,830 in penalties. Former workers also described brutal schedules, including 10 to 12-hour days, 6 days a week. The flashy shop viewers saw on TV had some very real labor problems happening behind the scenes. So what really happened to the cars from Pimp My Ride? The honest truth is that they went right back to being what they always were. Old, broken down rust buckets, just with a fresh coat of bright paint and a trunk full of temporary props that were stripped out soon after. The show sold everyone a dream about saving garbage cars, but it was always a TV production first and a mechanics shop a very distant second. The goal was always the spectacle and the 30 minutes of wild entertainment, while the actual driving safety of the cars took a back seat. For the contestants, looking back on the experience is a mixed bag. To be fair, most of them still say they had a great time being on TV, and there was genuine hype in being part of such a huge pop culture moment. But that fun came with stripped out gadgets, broken engines, months without a car, surprise tax bills, and the slow realization that the dream ride they saw on screen was not the vehicle they actually got to drive home. At the end of the day, Pimp My Ride was peak 2000s MTV. It was built on the exact same trick as the rest of early reality TV. The massive gap between what gets shown on camera and what actually happens when filming stops. The backseat fish tanks, cotton candy makers, and pop-up TV screens were real while the cameras were rolling. But they were just stage props, and as soon as the show was over, the illusion fell apart. The cars, stripped of their flashy gadgets and still completely broken underneath, quietly went back to the real world. Tuna, no Crust, signing off.